Good morning, everyone. So my name is Rachel Weingarten. I'm on the Partner Alliance team. So thank you guys for joining this webinar this morning. This week we have Corey Miller and Matt Ward talking to us about Dome9. And so just a few housekeeping things before we go ahead and get started. Just a reminder that all of the lines are muted to help make sure that the sound stays clear. So please use the Q&A or the chat function to ask any questions. And then also just as a quick reminder that you can log this in Engage for an easy 10 points under training if you are using the Engage app. So definitely make sure to do that as well. So Corey and Matt, whenever you guys are ready, you can go ahead and get started.
Perfect. Thank you, Rachel. And good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Corey Miller, Cloud Partner Development Manager based here in Buffalo, New York. Sunny Buffalo, New York, that is. And with me today, I have Matt Ward, our Channel Security Engineer. He's based all the way across the country in Seattle, Washington. So we're really excited for you guys all to be here. Thank you for taking the time out here today to spend with us and talk about Dome9, or as you'll see throughout the presentation, Cloud Security Posture Management. So just to not get confused, they're the same products. As you all know, we acquired Dome9 a few years back, and just with the times and rebranding of different products, we'll be using the term Cloud Security Posture Management for that product throughout this deck, as well as Dome9. So just a little caveat there. So with that, we will begin. So Matt, let's get this thing going, man. All right, perfect. So you can build the slide right out if you'd like. And so guys, what I'm gonna do today is I will be presenting the first portion of today's presentation, going through just our cloud story with Check Point. We're not the old school firewall company anymore. You know, Check Point has made a lot of investments over the years to really become the premier partner when it comes to cloud security. And the product that we're gonna talk about today, Dome9, or Cloud Security Posture Management, is one of those pieces to the puzzle for your cloud journey. So when we talk cloud and we talk Check Point, things to think about: security at scale, security at speed, and security everywhere. That is the three things that really are the milestones or basis point for our cloud journey. So we've been leveraging cloud for a while now, and at first we tried the traditional way of doing things that work for on-premise deployments. We choose different products for different needs and try to mix them together. It quickly became obvious that we can't secure the cloud the way we've been securing our physical data centers. One second, sorry. All right. Sorry, I guess I have a little technical difficulty here. Sorry about that. All right. So the primary reason has to do with scale and agility. Cloud environments are designed to be dynamic and agile. To meet changes in demand, we need to be comprehensive. We need to make sure our security scales along with the underlying cloud infrastructure and services. When we think speed, things are changing dynamically and don't conform to the weekly change request processes some of you might be familiar with. So how do we take the manual processes out of the equation so that the need for agility is no longer a barrier to security? And that is with Check Point and the CloudGuard products. So what are we up against? How can we embrace the cloud securely while addressing these challenges? And that's what we're going to talk about today. All the different products that CloudGuard can bring. All right. So most organizations, for the most part, are looking for that silver bullet. What they really need are a number of different security layers to keep them protected. So as Matt, as you open this slide up, if you could, you're going to see about 5 different products here. So first, private and public cloud network security, also known as CloudGuard IaaS, Cloud Security Posture Management, our Dome9 product, protection for your workloads, both containers and serverless, protection on the web app and API, and then finally, the cloud intelligence and threat hunting. So as I go through these different items here, the thing to keep in mind is today's presentation will be based on the Cloud Security Posture Management piece. So that will be focused on. But if anybody on the line has any questions regarding the other products, please reach out to myself or Matt after the call, and we'd be more than happy to go through them with you. So as we look at CloudGuard and well, basically Check Point's CloudGuard products, let's start with the actual infrastructure itself. Creating security policies to protect traffic as it moves east to west, north, south, your environment should always be your starting point. But as we progress, we need to make sure those environments are configured accordingly to the organizational policies in place and comply with relevant regulations. And that brings up cloud security posture management. The next piece is your workload protection. So for containerized applications and serverless functions, concerns have grown around excessive permissions, rapid development cycles exposing those environments to vulnerabilities. These workloads need their own protections. Moving on, we start to consider web app and API protection. So web applications are using more and more APIs and need to be protected from API attacks and malicious bot traffic. And then furthermore, you'll need to enrich those raw logs with meaningful comprehensive intelligence, allowing you to identify threats and remediate them with ease. And that is our cloud intelligence threat hunter. So at the moment, you might not have all of these protections right now, and that's fine, that's okay. Throughout this presentation, we're going to talk to you guys about cloud security posture management and the protections there. But as time goes on and things start to evolve, I would highly recommend that you consider the other products that we have in our portfolio that can protect you in your journey to the cloud. All right, Matt, you can move on. So cloud security posture management, 3 things to really consider, and 3 of our main topics are the continuous posture management, high fidelity security, and global security language. So there's no doubt you'll have your own organizational policies governing the use of cloud assets. For example, what sort of accounts should be in use and what sort of permission should they have? Or just say you spin up a new web server. What sort of default permission should those servers have? And which account will be able to interact with those servers? Question to ask yourself, is the person creating these services aware of your security policies? Maybe, maybe not. So when considering that, this will work well for a while until changes start happening that conflict with those policies. It quickly gets out of control until those policies dictating what should be the case end up being quite differently than what actually is the case. That's why monitoring those assets, accounts, and rules for compliance is critical. As configurations start deviating from baselines, excessive privileges make it easier for attackers to compromise these environments. We have people doing the right thing we have people doing the wrong thing, but for the right reasons. So with cloud security posture management, well, Dome9, we help you comply with not only your own organizational policies, but to a regulatory framework as well. And of course, we do this consistently across all of your clouds with a single interface for ease of management, giving you the same security posture in the cloud that you have in your data center. Moving on. All right. So before we get into the presentation that Matt's going to deliver on Dome9 and cloud security posture management, there are 4 things I want you guys to take away from this presentation. And that is, when you cloud with confidence with Checkpoint, you'll have a unified environment, you'll have security across the board, things will be automated for ease, and you'll be able to secure all of your devices, your laptops, everything with an IP everywhere. So unified, security, automated, and everywhere are the 4 items that Checkpoint believes in your journey to the cloud, you can cloud with confidence. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Matt Ward for a little more in-depth presentation on Dome9 or cloud security posture management. Matt?
Awesome. Hey, I appreciate that, Corey. So again, my name is Matt Ward. I'm on our channel team. So I'm interacting completely with our partner community, wanting to enable, facilitate, train, and knowledge transfer as much as possible here. As we've kind of been talking about our CloudGuard suite, I really want to dig into the meat and potatoes and take a moment to let's look at what cloud security posture management is. I hope most of you are already having this conversation, but I've engaged more people than not where I'm asking, what they're doing about cloud security posture management, and they haven't even really addressed that fully enough yet to talk about competitors or anything else. So, I mean, this is a very real threat out there, something that we need to take into consideration with all the cloud migration, transformation, the new born in the cloud, all of this in the cloud, it's a whole new environment. So I pulled Gartner, right? It's a pretty little quote here, but I feel that they really did succinctly identify what we're talking about: a continuous process of security improvements and adaptation to reduce the likelihood of successful attack, right? Continuous process is the big thing. You could be compliant right this moment, and 37 seconds from now someone can spin up something in a different account from a different team in a different VPC or some other organizational unit that you didn't even know about, and what was once compliant is falling away to non-compliance because of that ability to transfer and so forth, right? We're moving away from that virtual data center. It's going from that virtual data center. Now we've got this private clouds and public clouds, still virtualizing in our physical environment, but transforming, moving, pushing things up to these different public clouds. That could be Azure, AWS, or GCP. From these centralized locations, now we're going to these different branches. Our monolithic applications have moved into these ephemeral and container functions that are accessed and housed in the cloud, making it so much easier for us to spin things up and be able to handle all of the deployments we have. But with that ease comes some security gaps, right? From the hosted apps, we're moving into those SaaS applications. We're handing over some of that back-end control to these SaaS providers because that makes the ease of use for us that much easier. Office 365 being one of the prime examples of this. So we want to be able to move with this new speed that we have going, the speed of DevOps, right? These are all the power marketing terms that we get to hear today. But what I want to focus on with these achieving continuous, the challenge that we have, and really what Dome9 is able to address, is the governance, the visibility, and the prevention. And as much as it kind of animated and you have these three things, I like to throw them all up here. I don't feel that one is necessarily more important than the other. They're so tied in together. I cannot tell you how many people I have been to where I'm saying, okay, so how many workloads do you have in your cloud environment? And the answer I get back is, I don't know. Like, if we can't see all of our workloads, what hope do we have to protect them? So being able to get that visibility. The native clouds, unfortunately, they don't have that, right? You've got to jump through 5, 6 different windows to be able to see things. Trying to decipher an AWS or an Azure flow log is challenging, right? I mean, if you have your networking background, you can kind of piecemeal it through, but it's not the most user read friendly thing out there. We know that the cloud misconfigurations are going to be the biggest functional issues that we have to deal with. Unsecured S3 buckets that are accessible from the internet, that are allowing people to pull down all sorts of information, personally identifiable information, social security numbers, credit card numbers, who knows what it can all kind of hit. So we need to make sure that we're constantly addressing that visibility, that we're continuing to keep ourselves in whatever compliance and regulatory rule sets we have, and of course, still able to have that same security prevention for any unknown threats that are out there trying to access any of your cloud workloads. Just the quick understanding that AWS once had less than 30 services. We are now over 212 as of May 2020, right? So AWS is just constantly growing. They're adding more services, they're adding more functionality, and those are just more vulnerability vectors that can be used for potential exploit. So we have to understand how we can see and protect all of this. Right, just what we need to be able to do is our network security and prevention. And really a lot of that security comes in with the visibility, but the threat prevention, being able to see what's going on, our posture management, making sure that nothing is falling outside of compliance, the new with our application security, because we're moving away from those monolithic where I've got a server, and on the server I built my my web services, and on top of that I've got my applications that then can push out. Now we can just containerize all of that and build the web server components that we need and let everything else be managed, but we have to protect those API calls and that data transfer that's occurring. And then with all of the intelligence that we're collecting from the native clouds, and then for us to be able to correlate that and turn it into actionable data, something that we can actually use to kind of see here. So, I mean, that's what this is all kind of talking about in these cute little cloud pictures. The shared responsibility model, I'm sure that everybody's heard about this until we're all blue in the face. The big thing that I like to take away from the shared responsibility model is how many times we have a misunderstanding, right? That there was a Barracuda Networks did the survey, but they surveyed 550 IT decision makers. We're talking C-level, VP, director level people, and 64% came back believing that it was the cloud provider's responsibility to protect customer data. That is a huge gap, a huge misunderstanding in what's going on here. The very real fact of the matter, as much as we can talk about this shared responsibility model, it's not going to be Azure, it's not going to be AWS, it's not going to be Kubernetes or Google that are going to be the ones that are exploited for the strong majority. They spent a lot of time, money, energy, resources to make sure that they have everything from the physical security, the ability to get into their physical data centers, the power compliance, the redundancies, the hardware, software, everything that they have built. Sure, that can potentially go down, but the 95, the 98% is going to be all on us as the consumer, right? The things, identity management, logging, encryption keys, network security, cloud asset management, backup and disaster recovery. All of this is our responsibility. If we miss any one of these steps, the cloud is a very dangerous place. Okay, so here it is. The 95% of cloud security issues will be the result of misconfiguration. This is not going to be because Azure had a huge exploit or AWS, failed completely. That's the likelihood of that is very minimal. So with our CloudGuard, our posture management, so Dome9, Corey nailed it, right? We're going to be using cloud security posture management, that CSPM, and we're going to be using Dome9 fairly interchangeably here to be able to go back and forth as that name is just kind of moving with the industry, that this is our posture management solution. And we can integrate where we get that visualization, we get that compliance and active protection, as well as our intelligence, but we're able to actually integrate with all of these different SIM products. We can offload so that you can actually see this, all of the monitor, the protections that are actually happening, get the logs of events that have occurred in the past. We can set up notifications so that you can offload them to any of these SIM locations, send it off to PagerDuty, send it off to anything that supports JSON. Really, we have lots of abilities so that you can see all of this information for that actionable intelligence, right? Once we've got it, we want you to be able to do something with it. This is just kind of the end of the slide before I'm going to jump into the real demo here, but I just want to go through here and make sure that we see it. This is super easy. The 5 highest misconfigurations to look at right there. MFA, not enabled for the root account. Services with excessive privileges, publicly exposed cloud assets, logging disabled, and insufficient encryption for your key management. Right? These right here are the top end misconfigurations that will exploit, right? Without MFA, we can, who knows who's actually logging into your root account. If somebody has your root account, that's the keys to the castle, right? That game over. Excessive privileges, we're going to talk about that, especially when I get into some of the API stuff. It is ridiculous how much we accidentally open things far more than they ever really need to be open. And that is a dangerous thing. We never did that on-prem. We need to take that same mentality into the cloud. Publicly exposed assets, logging, all of this is just that visibility and management, which is going to facilitate that misconfiguration. All right, so the 3 things, and again, this is just a quick little picture of it. Visibility, we're going to look at the pretty dashboards and what else I'm able to bring in my UI to show you that visibility so that we can actually see all of this, the workloads and the information that we have in front of us, what's running in our environment. The ongoing posture management, I'm going to talk about our governance service language, which is how we're able to query for all of this information, and then how we can make sure that we are falling in compliance with reports and how that can be set up into a continuous methodology. And then we're going to need to evaluate those results, look at those reports and understand what we're going to need to do with them, how we can actually remediate, how we can fix, how we can up our compliance results that we're getting. All the way into a full-blown automation process where we want to be able to automatically remediate that when we see that there's something that's going on, an EC2 instance gets spun up in a region that we're not supposed to spin in. We can use automatic automation here to automatically turn off that instance to make sure that they're not spinning up in an instance in a region that we do not want to use, Sao Paulo, whatever it might be, that we are not interested in using that region. We can lock it down completely. If I have an S3 bucket that's not encrypted, if I have keys, traffic that's not being sent encrypted, we can use all of this to automate, or we can use our cloud bots to automate all of this and automatically remediate any of these issues that we're running into. So really, because I do want to get to the demo here, this is the last thing I'm going to show you, just a quick table that is actually differentiators for what we at Dome9 have. This is the most mature product. This is the most established product out there on the market. The number of API calls that we have supported through all of our cloud vendors is exponentially higher than any competitor that we have out there. The compliance standards that we have 3 times the number of compliance standards availability. That's everything from your just general best practices to your NIST, your CIS, your HIPAA, PCI, governmental compliance and regulatory rule sets that we can apply. The customization for those rule sets that we can then take the pre-canned rule sets and then tweak them and customize and rebuild them and clone them as much as we need to make them fit specifically our environment. The clear visibility you're going to see, the number of visualizations that we have. We're not just basing our visualizations on data flow on traffic like some of our competitors, right? This is actually looking at the individual APIs, the security groups, the every component to really get that full picture of what's going on. Let's see here. So I think I'm just going to jump right into my UI here now. But I guess I wanted to give a moment to see. I'm not sure. I know that we've got a lot here and it's kind of muted, but are there any questions? Do we have any moment to take that before I continue forward? Going, gone. I like it. Okay, so this is Dome9. This is our cloud security posture management. When we log in, right, you're going to go to secure.dome9.com and you log in with your credentials. It's very simple. You're going to be greeted first with this dashboard. And already we're going to be provided with a whole lot of that visibility that we haven't been able to get from our native cloud providers. This is hugely beneficial if we're just working with any one of our single public clouds, right? AWS, Azure, GCP, but even more so with those people who are working in multiple public clouds, because Azure does some things better than AWS, that does some things better than Google, and any combination therein. So being able to see all of this in a single display, in a single dashboard of what's going on immediately, right? When I say, okay, how many workloads do you have running? They can suddenly start telling me about the exact number of protected assets they have, protected assets based on their different accounts. And all of this is 100% configurable. So you can see that all of these, that we get these beautiful little dashboards, and it's got a bunch of pre-canned dashboards. That's my home, AWS, Azure, GCP, Kubernetes, serverless. And you can kind of see those all listed here as my pre-canned dashboards. But you can also make your own dashboards, right? Like I created this. This is Matt's home. And all I actually did was I cloned this dashboard. Maybe I like a lot of the stuff on this dashboard, but then once I've cloned it, maybe there's a couple things here that I don't like, right? Maybe I don't need this, so I can delete it. Maybe I want to add a widget. Well, with the widgets that we're going to add, you give it whatever title you want, but do you want protected assets, traffic, event activity, accounts, compliance? And within, under compliance, then it's going to give you subcategories. And so you can build out what's going to be most beneficial for you to see at that flash snapshot when you first log in, so that you get that potent information for what you might need. Now, this solution is actually going to benefit multiple teams in an environment, right? This could be the DevOps team, this could be your IT team, this could be your security team, this could be your executives, because everybody's going to be able to pull a little piece from this particular solution we have. And you can even get into the whole making users and roles so that my executives get, read access to reports, and my IT department is able to create policy or do whatever. And so you can really set different levels of privileges for different groups of people who might be using this solution for different purposes. Okay, so now that's just the dashboards, and kind of what we've got is as you first splash into our screen. But now I want to kind of go down, we're going to work our way down this nice little left side tile bar. I'm going to go to my asset management, where again, right out of the gate, any cloud accounts that you have onboarded onto your Dome9 solution here, they're going to show up automatically, and they're going to tell you, if they have IAM safety enabled, right? Like you can see, since it says enable, that means it's not enabled currently. Serverless protection, we got some that are. How many online instances? Are we using logic? What is the status of this environment? So just quick, at a glance, what's going on with any given account that you have. And you can see that, this is Azure, and got multiple different pages of these accounts that you can see, and you can just constantly continue to onboard as many accounts as your infrastructure requires. You can filter through this. So if I want to only see certain, if I want to see certain platforms, if I only want to see my AWS or Azure or GCP, I can do that. If I only want to see, IAM safety specific enabled accounts, we can do that. If I only want to see serverless, so I mean, this is just nice little filter options that you can see to give you better understanding of and look at what's going on with all of your accounts. All right, so now how do we onboard these accounts? As is in so many different things, right? We got multiple different ways to do this. Right here from my cloud accounts, I can just add a new account. AWS, Azure, GCP, Kubernetes, whatever it might be. Alternatively, we can come down here to our onboarding section, which is going to be the same thing essentially, right? That I can choose from any one of these. Onboarding one of these accounts is incredibly easy. So I'm just going to use AWS for the moment. We click on this. There are two ways that you can engage with a public cloud, through read-only or through read-write, right? Whichever way you want to start with. A great thing, since we have a bunch of our partners here, what I would honestly suggest at the beginning is position yourself as, let's do a cloud environment assessment. You can use Dome9 for 30 days for free. We give it as a free trial. All you have to do is go to dome9.com, secure.dome9.com, and create a new account. And it will spin it up for 2 weeks as like a free demo. And if you contact your local security engineer, they'll get that bumped up to a full-blown account for 30 days that you can use to show off Dome9 and let them assess, right? To get this read-only mode, it is so very simple. Like, I'm just going to say, get started, and it walks you through that. You log into your AWS console. You're going to go to your services for the IAM service. You're going to create a new IAM policy. We're going to use JSON, and I can copy this to my clipboard, but this is all it is. It's JSON, and you can kind of see here what it's doing, that it's giving us the read-write permissions to talk to all of these different instances, to talk to these different services that it has, right? Kinesis, EC2, S3 bucket. So this is all just that allowing us the visibility to see this, but you literally just copy and paste this into an IAM policy in AWS, and you're going to create, your new policy, and it's done. Within 5 minutes, it's going to start pulling information because it starts making API calls in the backend directly to that native cloud provider. You can always go into the read-write mode later, where read-write, we have a little bit more efficacy that we can take, in taking that proactive actions. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. But just the onboarding process, very straightforward, very easy. And then each one of your cloud accounts will show up there and start registering information. Now what we want to do is I want to get into, and I mean, again, I'll just give you the short view of the protected assets. It's just another way that we can look at this. So now for each account we have, it's going to show you all of the assets that you got, and it even breaks it down into EC2, network interfaces, volumes, VPCs, IAM roles. So you can just, again, get another visualization of every single one of your workloads that you have associated with Dome9. Clarity is where we start getting into some of the visualization differentials that really I'll box with anybody on the market against this. I say Dome9, we are far more robust in what we're doing with any visualizations that we have. So it's going to list out all of your different environments that you have here. And so let's say I'm going to go to my AWS production environment. And it shows all of the different regions where I have workloads under this account. So AWS prod is the AWS account that we're looking at. And here's all of the regions and workloads that are running within that account. So if I want to go to Oregon, the first thing that I'm going to see here is these are all of the VPCs that live in Oregon. So of all of those that we have, and of course, this is all very, you can scale in and scale out. You can scroll in, scroll out, so you can move around and see what's going on. But when you click on any one of these, it's just going to give you a quick, okay, so instance 2 can communicate with instance 1. We have the ability for these two VPCs to communicate with each other, right? That's at first, that's really all we need. And a lot of this, of course, it's just in a demo environment, so I don't have a bunch of things in every place. But if we go to my main demo VPC, right, we can see what other VPCs it can communicate with. I can see all of the different workloads that I have running within my main demo VPC, right? One Lambda function, 16 instances, an elastic load balancer, a database, and an application load balancer. From here, I can go into one of two different views: an asset view, where I can see literally the ability of, and what's going on with each individual asset, and the security group view, which the security group view is what's allowing these VPCs and workloads to be able to communicate with each other, right? That when we associate a security group with a workload, that's telling it what ports and protocols, how it can communicate with whatever it needs to talk to. I'm going to start with asset. And again, it looks very busy here. It's just showing all of the communication that's going on between these workloads. What we call our kind of colored columns here is swim lanes, right? And what I want you to think of here is like, we don't own the external swim lane. And by own, I mean, none of these objects are associated with an account that has been onboarded to Dome9, right? So this is something outside of our visibility, if you will, outside of something that's our managed control. Anything from the DMZ all the way to internal is all controlled by our environment. It's just different levels of accessibility for these different workloads with our environment. And so if I come in here and, let's say database 1. So with database 1 here, first, again, I'm getting communication so I can see what's going on, right? It kind of groups these together so we can see a little bit more. But this database 1, I can see what all it's communicating with in my nice little visualization. And then of course over here, where I really get into this is there are 20 different sources that can come into this database instances. Okay, so 20 different sources are trying to communicate inbound with this database. This database has 11 targets as its destination that it tries to communicate with. So again, this is just giving me a very clear picture of what workloads the workload in question, database 1, is able to communicate with, and what workloads are communicating with my database 1 workload, right? So I mean, right here in one space, I have all of this information at my fingertips. Try and do that in AWS. It'll take you about 6 different windows to find out what's going on with the workload, what's going on with the security groups, what's going on with communication. I mean, what's going on with the flow logs. It's a lot of bouncing around in your native cloud environment. Moreover, with any of these workloads, I can always, these little chain links would allow me to, if I click on this, you'll notice it opens a new tab and it gives me information about that specific workload. And really all it's doing is it's filtering my protected assets. Because if you remember, notice we're back in asset management where all my cloud accounts was, where I was looking at the clarity and the onboarding that I was talking about. It's just jumped us into the protected assets where I showed you all of our workloads, but it's just filtering for me automatically. And I mean, the information that you're able to get from this, right? So there's no public IP address on this. Awesome. It's just got a private IP. The database server for inbound rules, right? The database servers, this is the security group, and we can look at security groups, of course, as well. But the port and the scope of what it's able to communicate with. The NACL policies, your outbound policies, database servers, right? All traffic is allowed to go towards whatever it might be. So just ways that we can see and dig further down into any one of those individual instances. And of course I can go into, my database 1 instance. It's going to do the same thing. And it's just going to show me more information about that particular workload that I've got running. Right, IP information. I mean, all the way down to IAM policies, if they've got those in events that might be occurring, traffic activity, alerts, findings. So, I mean, all of this is just more information that we can give. I don't always go in here. The demo environment doesn't always have these necessarily populated, but it's going to give us all of this information that we can pull across here. So now I'm going to use my cookie crumbs to go backwards because right now, remember, we're in that asset view. And so I'm just going to go back to my main VPC. Right, so here's my main VPC. So it just kind of snapped me back where I clicked that asset, and that's how I got where we were previously. Now this time I'm going to click on security groups. It's going to give us our same swim lanes, but some of the big stuff that is really able to be used for this, I mean, the exciting show off is I'm going to come down here to 0.0.0.0/0. And suddenly I can see a bunch of security groups that are allowing traffic out to any public IP address. Well, and moreover, what I want to do is I want to say, okay, so all of these are security groups that are allowing access to any public IP address in the world. And it looks like we've got access coming on port 22, port 80, 21, port 80, port, ICMP protocol 5, ICMP protocol 256, and TCP 80. So that means I want to check what's going on with some of these security groups. Be like, what is up with TCP port 22? So let's go to my default security group. And we can see the line between the two. Over here is what's going to give me a little bit more information about this. Like inbound, I have 2 rules. This default security group is allowing web traffic, port 80 traffic from any public IP address in the world. Now, that makes sense. Maybe this is a web server. Maybe this is facilitating traffic to a web server. And certainly we need people to arrive at my web server on port 80 to view my website. SSH is open to the public internet from 0.0.0.0. This seems like a terrible thing, right? This is incredibly dangerous. This is horrific. Needs to be resolved and addressed immediately. So suddenly we get this look and we can see, and I can jump back to each one and I can start checking all of these inbound, all TCP. So, I mean, this one is letting all TCP traffic in, but it's only letting it in through this, from this particular security group, right? So it's got it set it up so it's a limited scope that it's at least allowing. FTP port 21 is open from the public internet, right? SSH, FTP. These are things should probably be done with a VPN, or should be done with, from at minimum a very controlled scope of IP addresses from known, sources that you're going to be arriving at. But having SSH and or port 20 FTP open to the public internet, probably not good. SSH port 22, the scope, so we can see all of the different things that can arrive inbound through this particular security group via IP address. So it just really lays out how all of that kind of looks. Okay, so that's just the taste of visibility, man. Honestly, like I could spend a bunch of time in each one of these sections, and I really want you to see a lot of this stuff. So that's my visibility that I'm going to kind of stop there for the moment, and I'm going to jump down to posture management. Posture management, this is where we're talking about that governance, that compliance that we need to be able to instill. And Dome9 gives you a bunch of compliance bundles, these rule sets out of the box. But what I'm going to start with is I want to start with our GSL builder. I'm not going to get too in depth with this, but I want you to get the foundation of where all of this is coming from, how we're able to generate or gather this information. It's through this query language that Checkpoint has built themselves. This is yet another huge distinguishing factor between us and all of our competitors. I would love for you to go and have to do a query, whether it be in a native cloud environment or one of the other third-party CSPMs, and have to put in the JSON or the SQL querying in order to get the information back that you need. Whereas Checkpoint has really taken a dedicated effort to build this language that is much more human-based functional to make it easier and shorter to query for information. So I'm just going to give an example right here. Are all of these different, AWS is what I'm looking at right now. And so here's all of these different AWS services that exist out there. There's a bunch of them. But what I'm going to say is, let's say I'm going to go IAM user. So I want my IAM user, right? And it just starts to build for me. It gives me all the actions. Do I want my IAM users to should have or should not have, or my IAM user where, right? So it's going to help you build this. I'm going to say IAM user should have. And what if we say, I know you're here, not virtual MFA. Sorry, there it is, MFA active. I was searching for it, I knew it was there. So IAM user should have MFA active and equals true. Right? So this is a very easy query, a very short one. I'm just saying I want my IAM users should have MFA active, and I click test. And it's going to run that test for me right now. And you can see that there were 3 IAM users tested, there were 3 relevant, and 3 of them are non-compliant. So that's something that I would address. I could expand this information about my different users, and we could see what's going on. So I could dive in there about what we need to do to actually, what needs to be fixed, if that was something I cared about. But this right here is the foundation for how we build all of our queries. So now that we've just kind of seen that, right, and I'm going to get rid of this. You can kind of always walk backwards by just deleting these things so you can restart your query however you might want to. But now let's go into my compliance rule sets. This place, we have thousands of rules pre-built for you. We have hundreds of rule sets. You see the 130 results? Okay, that's 130 rule sets. But each rule set, for example, this one rule set has 265 rules in it. This one has 109 in it, and we have 130 bundles. So there's a lot of rules that we have here, a lot of different ways that we can kind of apply these things. And I'm starting off with the type being, so there's two different ways that we can see this. Of course, there's the CloudGuard managed, and these are the initial bundles that get built. And then of course, customers, I can clone, I can recreate, I can customize, I can make new queries that I save into these rule sets that I can build for myself. So it all depends on how deep you or the team that is working with Dome9 really wants to get. So let's see here, I'm going to go type, and I'm just going to look at the CloudGuard managed for now because my demo environment gets pretty hectic. And what if I say NIST as just an example? So NIST, I just want to look at this, right? This is a great starting point. If you're not as familiar with your cloud and you're like, man, where should I start? The National Institute of Standards and Technology, right? For the US, this is a great place to start. And if I open up this bundle, what we're going to see is here's all my rules. And I know I'm just kind of scrolling, but you can see that there are pages of these rules because there's 109 rules built into this particular set. And let's look at what it's doing, making sure that your AWS Kinesis server's data at rest has server-side encryption. So just making sure that your data at rest is encrypted, that your KMS, the Kinesis streams are encrypted with KMS master keys from the same account. Avoid the use of the root account. There shouldn't be any high-level findings in this, alt-rest encryption. Ensure that CloudTrail logs are encrypted and using KMS for it. So these are just AWS config is enabled in all regions. These are just some of the best practices and NIST standards that you have that you can start with. And so what we do is if I come here to my compliance and I say that this is the one I want to run, I'm going to click on the play button right now. We're going to run this assessment. Now I can run this on any of my cloud accounts. I'm going to run it on AWS Prod. I can get very specific that I can run it on only a specific region if I wanted to. And then within that region, only a specific VPC. So depends on how granular you want your individual report for whatever the context you're trying to gather, but you can get this as broad or as narrow as you want. This is going to be running a bunch, 100 rules across thousands of workloads. And I want you to just see how quickly this is going to respond back for me. I mean, it's amazing how much we can get this on the fly, but this is literally going through, gathering information via API call, flow log, and data transfer that we have, and metadata that we have picked up to generate this full-blown report. So we just ran a test across 4,857 workloads in the time that you saw that there. That was a live run of this test. Almost 5,000 workloads that we just ran over 109 tests where we can get our results. So this right here, this is gold. If you're talking to a CISO, if you're talking to a CTO, a CIO, someone at the director level or above, they're going to love this because right now what they care about is, shoot, we are 70% compliant, right? That's what they know, is that we are 70% compliant. And we can go through and see what's going on. You know, that instances without inspector running in the last 30 days, 76 tested, 76 non-compliant, S3 buckets without MFA. Each one of these can be seen. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to print this off. And I'm going to print off the executive summary. And normally I would just print it to a PDF, but we really don't need to because it snaps it right here for me. So this is the report itself. And the table, kind of shows us what we've got going on. Here's the number of tests that we just passed. Here's how many we passed. Here's how many we failed, right? This is what a lot of the execs are going to be caring about. And we can see what's going on when it comes to the individual workloads by type. We can see what's going on by region. And then when you really get into the individual nasties of it, we can see what's going on for each failed summary test. And that's something that you hand over to the security team, to the cloud team, to whatever it is, that's where they can work on, so that the next time, fast forward 1 month, when we run this same compliance report, all the director and above care about is that number is higher than it was last time. Right? That's how they get paid. That's where a lot of their bonuses, that's where their KPI comes in, is how compliant are you? How continuously compliant are you? What kind of uptime do you have? Blah, blah, blah. This is, so being able to provide those reports at that high level, while at the same time being able to truly dig in any one of these where I wanted to know more information about the 75 non-compliant that have failed, I can expand on this information. Let's see here, right? So all of this, and then within the failing is something that we call cloud bots. And I'm just looking at my time. I want to make sure that I'm able to get to some of the other things here. But it's one thing to just recognize and be able to identify that there is a problem. But what we can actually do is through this cloud bots. CloudBots is an open source project. This is really cool. So it's an open source project by Checkpoint. And what it's allowing us to do is create these Lambda functions, essentially, that will go in and automatically remediate and roll back anything that makes you fall outside of compliance. Let's say you spin up an EC2 instance that is in a region that you have locked out. Well, we can automatically delete or roll back or terminate that EC2 instance. If you have a new instance turned on, we can automatically enable CloudTrail because we have that set up as a cloud bot, that if you have this set up, then you have to have CloudTrail. An S3 bucket, we can make it so that you must encrypt the S3 bucket. That even if you spin up an S3 bucket that's not encrypted, the cloud bot will automatically encrypt it for you. So let's see here. Oops. This is just kind of a quick look at how this works, right? So we've got Dome9, and it's going to find some sort of compliance finding, an EC2 instance that's out of region, a S3 bucket that's not encrypted, data in transfer that's not encrypted, whatever it might be, right? And so an SNS topic is going to get sent to, we're going to see this, we send this over to our SNS topic that is going to actually send it and trigger that Lambda function that is the cloud bot, and the cloud bot will actually do the remediation as we've assigned it, whatever that might be. And that actually then sends another SNS topic that's just the confirmation that it's been completed, the remediation, so that we can send it to another SNS that then sends out an email notification. And we can then offload that to your email, to Slack, to whatever it might be, PagerDuty. We can send it over anywhere. So this is where the auto remediation comes in. And one of the cool bits about cloud bots is that you can still do this from a read-only state. I do not need to be in a read-write mode with Dome9 in order to enact this, because the cloud bots and everything live within the AWS or Azure account. So we are simply having triggering an SNS topic, and everything else then happens natively in the cloud. So that the SNS messaging will take care of triggering the Lambda function, so that all of that occurs within the AWS native environment, and we don't need write permissions to make that happen. It's just a neat distinguishing factor, because certainly everybody else is asking for write permissions to do a lot more. We also have our read write, and there we can get into things where you can manage your group or your full AWS, Azure, GCP. You can manage all of that from natively within Dome9. But for just our cloud bots, our remediation, things of this nature, you don't even have to be in that read write mode. And the way that this works is, like I'm going to say, I'm going to remediate by cloud account for my AWS prod. And I could get as specific as only apply this rule to just a specific entity. But here's all my cloud bots, right? AMI set to private, CloudTrail enabled, config enabled, EC2 attach instance role, create snapshot, release EPS, right? So all of these are just different IAM users roles to attach a specific policy. We can quarantine IAM users, internet gateway delete if they're spinning up a gateway someplace that they shouldn't, right? Block all public access to S3. So all of these are just our native built cloud bots. But this is an open source project, which means that others can actually add and continue to build and integrate more. That all gets vetted, and we have our backend to protect our open source project. But this is a big thing that is able to integrate in with what we've got going with our with these compliance rule sets. That gets combined with policy. Policy is where we're able to actually enforce that continuous compliance, right? That it's not just a one-off where I come into my GS or I come into one of my compliance rule sets and I just run it on the fly. My compliance policies are what allow me to run this constantly. So if I say, you know, my cloud account policy, I'm going to say AWS, and I'm going to select which account that I want. So maybe I say both of these accounts, prod and stage. So now I'm associating 2 accounts with whatever policy I want. And so maybe I do like this CIS Foundations 1.2, and then we'll type in NIST again, and I'll do this NIST. And so now those 2 accounts are going to be set to those, are going to be set to those rules where they're continuously run. Anytime anything in those environments within those accounts changes, this compliance rule set runs itself, fires off every time. Anytime there's a change, any API call, so that we constantly know that the moment something has changed, we can roll and remediate it backwards. So this is where you get that continuous compliance, and you can do this per account, you can do this per entity. There's the scope and granularity of this is massive. All right, I feel like we're running short here. Rachel, let me ask you, because I want to make sure that we leave a few minutes for question and answer. Do you want me to go through a couple more sections? Should I start here and let us go? What do you think?
We do have one question that I see in the Q&A.
I see your mic moving, Rachel, but I can't hear you.
Oh.
I can hear. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, Matt, can you hear me? Matt, you there? Matt, you there? Interesting. Matt, can you hear me?
All right. Well, I apologize, guys. I'm having technical difficulty because I definitely cannot hear you guys at the moment. Let's see here.
Matt, I'm gonna send Matt the question there right in the bot into his direction.
Let's see. I see a question. Can I elaborate on differences in features when viewing Azure versus AWS, like VNet peering, like VPC peering? Absolutely. So some of the only differences with AWS and Azure, of course, is Azure is a different focus, and so they don't necessarily have quite the same level of services out there, but you're still going to get the same visualization. So here's my AWS or my Azure prod environment. Let's see here, and we'll try North Central US. Are we only running in one VNet here? Looks like we might only be running in one VNet here. Again, it'll still show you the multiple VNets if you have that and how they're able to communicate and talk to each other. Let's see if I can maybe find Central US. There we go. Yeah. So I mean, just so you can kind of see the VPCs and what's happening and whether or not they're able to, like, these are all isolated VPCs, but able to see that same information. And North Central US, click view. Right. And again, you get to see your virtual machines, your load balancers, and then at the asset visualization, it's going to show you kind of what's going on. So we do a grouping here for a lot of those assets if they're in, because, you know, just so you have all those IPs that are coming down together that you can kind of see what's going on. If you click on any one of those, it's still, again, going to give you the targets and sources of all of that traffic. So it's going to be very similar, especially in the clarity specific portion of it. When you get to some of the services, right, and how you're calling on with your GSL, of course, it's a little bit different, but it's all going to feel very, very similar. Only differences being the needed differences because the native clouds are different. But hey, Carl, I appreciate the question. I hope that gave you at least kind of some answer there and some visualization of what that kind of looks like a bit more.
Well, I know we only have about 5 minutes left here. Matt, awesome work there. Does anyone else have any questions on the line? If you do, please send them to the question box, and then Matt and I can go through that.
Absolutely, and I apologize, guys, because it's always fun. And if there's more you'd like to follow up, I mean, hit me up, hit up your local SEs, because there's so much. I mean, in the serverless aspects of things where we're getting into API protections, I would love to be able to, I mean, just quickly talk about some of these fun things. So this is actually a workload that we have going on, right? A Lambda function that we're working in that serverless capacity that we can even protect at this level, everything from the configuration compliances to vulnerabilities and IAM hardening. giving us that information that we can see with this particular Lambda function. It has way more privileged permissiveness than it should ever be allowed to have, right? It has access for star. That's a wildcard. For star, a wildcard resource in anything it wants to do in S3 buckets. This is a critical severity. This is bad news, right? This is not good. I mean, the DynamoDB, they're still giving more operational access than is functionally necessary for what's going on. And what we are able to actually do with any of these is we can actually create a least permissive rule for them. You know, just as a quick example, if I click suggested fix here, I can go in and actually submit this to the Lambda function in question, this Great Read Slack chat bot. And by just inputting this IAM role, copy paste, like take you 2 minutes, copy paste this into my IAM role, it all of a sudden takes all of this and rolls it back down to least permissive. And we're doing all of this through API calls and being able to establish what information is necessary, what it's actually communicating with, how it's actually talking, to be able to establish all of that information. Checkpoint partners do have access to this demo. This is probably going to make us run long, but I won't keep you too much. But absolutely, if you don't know how to get to demo point, you can spin this up in demo point, play with AWS. When you're in there, you can just go to our tech point. Oh my goodness, I'm not going to bother with the two-factor right now. Okay, yes, absolutely. You go to Dome9 and go to your partner map under tech point. We definitely have a Dome9 environment that you can spin up, that you can get in here, move around and play with it yourself a little bit just to get a feel. Does CloudGuard require GA? GA, I apologize. I've just got too many options running through my head in GA here. Oh, does it require admin? So, I mean, again, it's all going to be dependent on how they have their AWS environment set up, right? Do they have one root account and then they're using a whole bunch of IAM users underneath it? Because then you just onboard that root account, and it's going to pull any of the IAM users underneath it. If you have multiple different admin accounts, I mean, you will need the root admin account to go into to that to some degree, but the onboarding for the read only is not going to require admin access, and you can choose whichever accounts you want to onboard, really. So same thing with Microsoft, just depending on what they've got with their groups. But absolutely, you just log in with you're going to onboard the root account, and from there any sub accounts will pull from within that. If you have totally separate accounts for individual teams, those all get onboarded together. And we do have the way that you can do with the resource grouping and everything else so that you can onboard that simultaneously. Absolutely. Hey, I appreciate the questions, guys. I think that finalizes, and I can actually hear things now at this point. So Corey, Rachel, I appreciate all your assistance there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Matt. That was awesome. And please, if anybody online, any partners, please reach out to myself, Corey Miller, or Matt Ward, obviously, after this presentation for further instructions, or your local CAMs, or whoever your account manager might be, and we can further the discussion. But other than that, though, thank you everybody for your time today. We do appreciate it, and I think we're all set. Rachel, anything else you want to add?
No, we are all set. Thank you both for an awesome presentation, and thank you everyone for joining. We will be sending out a copy of the recording, and we'll include their emails in there as well, so you can reach out directly to them. But thank you guys so much. That was awesome.
Perfect. And don't forget to log the event in the Engage app. Don't forget about that.